Hi, and welcome to episode 61 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Monday the 12th of December 2016. I'm coming to you from the central west of New South Wales in Australia, and it's lovely to have your company. It's a beautiful 32 degrees Celsius, or about 90 degrees Fahrenheit here today. Nice sunny summer's day, which is lovely. I don't have any spinning this week, but I do have some knitting to talk to you about. So I'll get on with a finished object, which is a bit of a collaboration. My gift knitting has been not too extraordinary this year, but my mum has been knitting up a storm, and she has made a couple of mice. So these mice are for my nieces or her granddaughters, and I think they've turned out beautiful. They're from a soft toy book that I bought her some years ago, and she's trying to use up some of her acrylics, and I think they're pretty cute. So my contribution so far is a pair of colourwork socks. I knit some tubes. They don't have any heels on them because their legs are fairly straight, so I didn't think that it needed any kind of heel. And I found the colourwork pattern from a book of Estonian charts. So they're sort of traditional Estonian charts. So they're sort of snowflakes. They're a little bit big for the sock because you can't really tell what they are up front, but I think they'll be okay. I'm not yet sure what kind of socks to do for the other one, but I'll do something, and there may be some scarves as well. But I think that it'll be a fun little gift for the girls. So that's my only finished object this week, but I'll get those other things done this week. I have a couple of works in progress, and I've been on a bit of after my scrappy socks last week, I've just wanted to knit more scrappy projects. So I decided to knit a sockhead hat, and I got this yarn a few months ago, which is from Miss Click Clack. It's her Melbourne Black in the Centre Place single superwash merino yarn, and it's a beautiful singles yarn. So for those who don't know, it just means that it's a single ply, but it's a fingering weight yarn. And my other sockhead hat that I knit was with a singles yarn, so that was definitely what this was destined to become. I did think about a shawl, but I was very keen on having a darker hat. But what I've decided to do is to stripe it. So I knit the rim or the brim with the Melbourne Black, and I did about 3.5 inches. I measured my previous sockhead hat, and it seemed like a good length. And then I've used some scrap yarns, leftovers, to knit some stripes. So in this particular stripe up here, I've actually combined two different scraps just to get a slightly larger stripe in there, and then I'm alternating with the Melbourne Black, and I'll keep doing that as I go along. When I first thought about doing this, I thought I was going to have some kind of wild hat, but when I put the question out on Instagram, people suggested that I do the striping with the black, and somehow I was just drawn to these sort of slightly more muted colours. So there's some skein yarn and some dingo dye works, and more Miss Click Clack and some atelier yarn, and it's just sort of the yellows and greys and army greens and a little bit of speckle in there as well. So I'm not sure yet, as I keep going, whether I'll keep it as muted as that, but I'm really liking the way that it's looking, and I think it will be a beautiful hat regardless of whether I do it this way or whether I sort of increase the colour towards the end of the hat. So this is a free pattern by Kelly McClure, and a lot of people have knit this hat. I'm knitting it on 2.5mm Addies. So this is, I think, the first time that I'm actually using Addies on a project. I'd ordered these needles a few months back with the intention of using it for a hat, and it's a 40 centimetre circular, so I'm not magic looping, and it's a really nice change to be knitting a hat or something with a larger circumference without having to magic loop and do all sorts of fancy things. So I'm really liking the 40 centimetre. It sort of fits perfectly for a hat. I will have to change over to double pointed needles as I decrease for the crown, but that's okay. They're a little bit, the addies are a little bit blunt for my liking. I think they're blunter than the normal higher, and they're definitely blunter than the higher sharps, but it's always fun to try out different needles. It seems to be working fine with these yarns. I'm not sort of splitting anything, but I'm also not doing anything fancy, whereas if I was doing something a bit more fancy, I think I would prefer to have some slightly sharper needles. When I'm changing colour, with my socks I'd sort of change colour randomly wherever I wanted to, but with this one I'm actually changing the colour in the same spot, and you can probably see a little bit of a denty kind of thing going on there. And what I'm using is the jogless stripe method. So what you do is you knit one round in the new colour, and then on the second round you pick up the stitch underneath the first stitch of the new colour and then knit it together with the first stitch, if that makes sense. You can Google jogless stripe and see how it's done. It's not difficult, you just have to remember it when you come around on the second round of the colour that you're picking up the stitch from underneath. I find that it has a fairly good effect with the colour change. It makes the stripes look a lot more even, but it doesn't really work if you're just doing single round stripes. So I'm doing 3 rounds on the Melbourne black at least, and then randomly sort of having at least 3 stripes on the other sections. Generally I think they're going to 4 or 5. I think there's even 6 in one of them. So I'm not sure yet if I'll do some larger black stripes as well, or if I'll just stick to the 3 stripes. But there are different techniques for changing colours, so some of them will change the starting place of the round, and then that reduces the effect of where you've changed the colours. So my inside at the moment has got quite a lot of yarn tails going along in there, and I'm going to just have to weave in my ends at sort of different angles so that it doesn't create a lump. But when I've used this technique before, it's worked okay, but I haven't been changing colours so frequently. It's usually been that I've been just alternating 2 colours and done that. The other thing with doing stripes, if you're going over quite a few rows, is it's a good idea to wrap your yarns around each other every now and then, and I sort of do that every 2 to 3 rows. It depends on how tall my sections are, and I just have a technique where I always think as I'm holding the yarns, I'm twisting counterclockwise. So some people will do it the other way. I'm not sure if it really matters, as long as you're being consistent with which way you're turning if you're going up a number of different rows. So yeah, I think the other thing that I was going to mention about this was, with some of these scraps I haven't been sure quite how many rounds I'm going to get out of them, and one of my tricks is to just get the yarn and lay it sort of roughly around the beanie 4 times, and if it goes around 4 times, then it should be enough for a round. I think it's probably about, for stockinette, 3 rounds of the length of knitting that you're going to do is sufficient, but I like to go 4 rounds just in case. And with my scrappy socks it didn't matter because I was ending yarns sort of anywhere around, but because I'm trying to change the yarns at the same spot, I'm making sure that I have enough to actually get through a round before I before I start the round. So that's my scrappy sock head, which isn't looking that scrappy, but I think as I get a few more colours in there it will start to look more scrappy. I'm not sure yet how tall I'll make this, whether I'll make it the same length as my other my other sock head hat, but we'll see as I go. But I'm really happy with how it's turning out. Loving the colours, and I'm loving the look of the Melbourne black. It's just got something really special about the way that the dye is put on that yarn, and I'm loving the singles yarn. So that's that one. I have also continued with my sock yarn blanket. So I've managed to get in my 1 square for the week. Eek. So this square is the one that I knit my mum's mittens out of. So it's the Rosehip Island Smarties in the Sea in the Oz sock base. So that's in there now, and it's still growing. I might need to actually spend a bit more time on it and just get a few more than one a week done. I'm definitely itching to get a crochet blanket on the hook, and but I need to get this one finished first. My Taskutaki cardigan has been growing as well, but it's very hard to show because I'm just working on the back panel, and I think I'll just sort of keep on knitting with it until I get the back panel finished, and then I'll show it again. But sort of hoping that in the next couple of weeks I'll have that in a place where I'm ready to start on the sleeves, and then it should zoom along and be finished pretty soon. I'm loving it still, but it's just a little bit of, it's not the most exciting knitting backwards and forwards. So I have also been thinking about my 2016 yarn goals and how I've sort of been tracking with them. So what I did at the start of the year, or late last year, was I put my yarn goals for this year on my Ravelry, sort of my profile page, and I just thought I'd go through them now just to see how I've sort of actually gone, because I'm also starting to plan my 2017 goals. So for 2016 I've got them on my iPad, which is why I'm looking down. I wanted to knit 6 pairs of socks, but I've actually knit 9, and also 1 that I started last year that I finished this year, or did the majority of knitting on this year. And I wanted to knit a pair of 2 at a time socks, and I've done that. I wanted to knit a brioche project, and I knit the Pop Fizzle beanie. I wanted to knit an Intarsia project, and I did my block socks, and that's something that I want to revisit again. I want to sort of re-knit those with a slightly different cable pattern on them. I wanted to knit a lace project, and I did the Maluka shawl. I wanted to knit a skirt, which I haven't gotten around to doing, but it's still, having experienced this first winter out here in the Central West, I've realised how cold it gets, so I'm definitely keen to try to get a skirt knit in the first half next year so that it's ready for winter. I wanted to knit the Taskutaki cardigan, so that's a work in progress and will be finished most likely next year. I wanted to take part in a mystery knit along, and I haven't done that, so that's definitely going to stay on the list for next year. I wanted to learn to knit longer stretches without looking, and it's something that I've been practicing. I think part of it's just habit, that I've looked at my knitting and it's really hard to break that habit. So I have been, when I'm working on my sock yarn blanket for instance, I try to make sure that I'm looking away and just sort of feeling the stitches, and when I'm knitting stockinette in the round, that's another good opportunity, but I'm definitely not as far along with it as I'd like, but I think I'm definitely doing better than I did at the start of the year. I wanted to learn English knitting, and I haven't done that. I wanted to publish a pattern on Ravelry, and there's some kind of psychological block in the way at the moment of getting that done, but I'm definitely keen to keep putting a little bit of pressure on myself to get that done. I wanted to buy from 3 Aussie indie dyers, and I've definitely done that. I wanted to buy from 1 overseas indie dyer, and I've done that, but I think I might have done 2 actually, so that's good, and I think probably 4 or 5 Australian indie dyers. and I wanted to visit 3 new to me yarn shops, and I don't think I've managed to do that. I know I went to the House of Wool, and I think Adagio Mills might kind of count because I went to their open day, and I've been to their market stall a few times, but I don't think I've really done a third one. I've been trying to find some, but I've sort of been to a few that have been part gift shop, part yarn shop sort of things. So I think next year I definitely have to try to get to more yarn shops. I wanted to spin a fractal spin, which I did. I wanted to spin a thicker woolen spin, and I'm sort of getting a bit better at that, but probably not to the point where I had wanted to. And I wanted to try a new yarn dyeing technique, and I kind of have done that, because I did try to dye some fibre, but it didn't really work out too well, and I've been a bit scared to actually spin up the fibre that I did. But they're sort of, I think, achieving about half of my goals, or 2/3 of my goals isn't too bad. I think it's always good to aim high and sort of get most of the way there than sort of get halfway through the year and have done everything. So I have done a whole heap of other projects along the way. So 2017, there's going to be a bunch of different goals, things where I want to learn new techniques, as well as sort of doing some of the things that I enjoy doing. So I think that in the next episode, I will be going through some of my 2017 yarn goals. I'm not sure if I'm going to be recording on Monday next week. I'll definitely be recording at some point next week, but just with the holiday, sort of everything ramping up, it might not be Monday, but I will definitely get in an episode before Christmas, and then I'm not too sure if I'll get a chance to between Christmas and New Year's, but I'm sure that everyone's busy, and missing a little bit of me isn't going to be too sad. I'm sure that you've got plenty of other fun things to get on with. So I'm wondering if anyone else has been setting any yarn goals. They might provide some inspiration for me, so feel free to pop them in the comments in YouTube, or visit the Ravelry group and let me know what sort of yarn goals you're thinking about. I definitely want to do another lace project. I'm thinking about a colourwork pullover, and that skirt that needs to be knit, and definitely something spinning wise, because I haven't been getting my wheel spinning enough recently. As for other things going on, I mentioned last week that I put some CDs out on a string near my garden so that the magpies wouldn't eat my garden, and I managed to catch one of them the other day standing underneath one of the CDs as it was blowing in the wind, and it was trying to leap up and eat it. So it sort of hopped up 3 times. It didn't manage to sort of bring it down or anything like that, but it probably realised that it wasn't a very tasty thing to be jumping at. But the garden seems to be growing, and things seem to be sort of slowly making progress, so I'll try to get some video of my rather embarrassingly odd looking garden for next time. I went on a bit of a drive on Saturday to Cowra. I sort of went just sort of meandering driving, and Cowra is about half an hour drive away, and it's sort of a larger city-ish thing. I'm not sure how many thousands of people live there, but I went up to the Peace Precinct, and there's a Japanese gardens there that I haven't been to before, but I want to go there sometime, but just not on too hot a day. But the Peace Precinct has a beautiful lookout, and you can see over Cowra and see the city, and then also in the distance there are some hills, and the hills are where my little village is. So it's always nice to go up there and just have a look and see how the seasons are changing the scenery, because just a couple of months ago everything was green and beautiful, and down there, because it's a bit lower down and a flatter land, the ground has gone sort of brown and sunburnt, whereas up here in the hills there's still some greenery around. So it's interesting to see how the seasons change. I've only been out in the countryside since April, so it's all a bit of a learning experience, sort of seeing what happens and what nature brings. So I'll pop in a bit of video from the piece Precinct, and I will leave you there. I hope that you're well and getting lots of knitting done, and crafting and crocheting and everything else. I'll see you soon.